All right, so today's webinar will be covering assessment automation. The reason we have assessment automation is to allow companies to be able to um, assess the risks that goes on with their organization within certain processes or certain activities that go on. So with this tool, there are kind of two steps to it. You set up the questionnaire template, and then you go ahead and start sending those templates out in the form of an assessment to gather information from people, and then you'll be able to do things like read reports from it, get a visual feel for it. So to get started, we'll go on the questionnaires, the templates homepage. Here's where you'll see a list of all the questionnaires that have already been made. You have two options with your tenant. You can either create your own questionnaire, and it'll provide you with like a bare bones outline of the questionnaire body, or you can choose from our gallery. So if we click on the gallery, you'll be able to choose from a list of over 30 to 40 pre-designed templates that are already designed with specific purposes in mind. You'll be able to go in, so if I were to click on one, you'll be able to see the different sections that are already outlined, and along with the different questions types that I'll get to shortly. But you'll be able to, with these templates that our R&D and our privacy team have worked together on to keep this up to date, you'll be able to choose this questionnaire and kind of go from there. Otherwise, you can go ahead and create your own template as well. So once you've decided which option to go, it'll appear here. We have two modes. We have a published mode and we have a draft mode. So the published mode is when you've created all of the changes to your questionnaire and you're ready to send it out. Draft mode is when it's still in the mode of being edited. You can customize everything. So to take a look at one, you can see here that this is already a published questionnaire. So if you wanted to create a new version, you would click on Create New Version. So now you're taken to the draft version, which is immediately the next version of the questionnaire. So you'll see a couple of things that stand out. So we have here our details page. This is where you'll be able to name the assessment or the template, give it a friendly name if needed, along with the description of that questionnaire. And then you can choose an icon to associate that questionnaire to. And then our next tab is our Builder tab. This is where the majority of your action will take place. So here is where you'll be able to do things like add a section to the questionnaire. You can add questions to the questionnaire. There are two ways to do that. So you can type in the question here along with the type. So we provide a multitude of types of questions available. Or you can drag and drop these different question types to the section. So if I wanted to create a yes/no kind of question, I would just drag this here, type in the name of the question along with a description, or we have other options available here. If you wanted to make this question a required question where an answer is required, you can allow for justification to allow for an explanation box. You can also allow for not sure and not applicable under those specific circumstances as well. Once you've created the question, you can go ahead and click Save, and that question will appear underneath the previous question. So if I were to create a question here, and I made this required and I saved this question, it'll pop up right here. And then with these questions, you have several options at your disposal. You can go ahead and edit the question again if you wanted to kind of make any changes. You can delete the question. if it's not a necessary question for you to have. Or we have what we call conditional logic. So conditional logic allows you to skip a question if the answer to the previous question doesn't apply. So what I mean by that is if I have this question here and I add a condition, the only action you'll be allowed to do with this conditional logic is skip a question. And based on that, you can skip to a certain section and a certain question within that section. All of this is predicated on whether you meet some conditions. So we have two types of conditions. We have any and we have all. So any pertains to the or kind of logic. So if the response to this is say yes, and then I add another option, for example, if any of my answers as a respondent, if I choose any of these answers, this will automatically allow me to skip this this question, or once you answer this question, you'll be able to skip to this section and this question within that section if either of these answers are selected. Now with all, that just simply means if all of these answers are selected, then that same logic will still apply. So the only difference is with all, you'll have to select both for that logic to apply. With any, you'll just have to select one of these. Once you've gone in and you've customized the builder portion of it, you can go into the rules section. The rules section allows you to do one of two things. You can create risks in the background so that if a respondent answers a question with a certain answer choice, that will automatically flag a risk in the back part. The respondent won't be able to see that. Or you can also submit an assessment upon completion. So what I mean by that is if a person answers, are you processing legal actions? If they say yes, what you can do is set up a condition where if they say yes, you can send them out another assessment for them to complete. So to add a rule, you have one of two options again. You can create a risk, define the risk level on how severe or critical it is, and then you can also give it a risk description and a recommendation as well. Again, based on what the answer is for any particular question. So if I click yes and I save it, so now the risk has been applied to that question once I publish that this questionnaire. Now if I add another one where I can send upon assessment, you can choose the type of template you want to send out if they answer a certain question. You can also either keep the approver unassigned or use the same approver as the current assessment. And then you can just fill out the logic here as well. So now I've created a risk and I've created the ability to send another assessment upon completion based on these answers. So once I've completed all of that, I can go ahead and publish this. And now you'll see that it's become published and ready to use and send out. The other options I wanted to point out is in draft mode. You can discard the draft. So if you're working on a draft and you don't really need it, you can just discard it if necessary. The other option you have is to show and hide previous versions as well. So if you're working on a specific template and you've made a multitude of changes to it, it'll show all of the version histories here. So you can go back to version 1, see what the difference is, what you've done here versus say version 5 as well. And you can hide this once you've done all of that. So now that you've published this template, you're ready to send it out. That's where step 2 comes in. So step 1 was just creating the questionnaire, customizing it, applying different logic to it as necessary. Step 2 is when you can use these questionnaires and send them out in the form of an assessment to a respondent. So to do that, you would click on the assessments page. And here you'll see our inventory of all of the assessments that have gone out. So you can do things like you can delete the assessment if necessary. You can click on the questionnaire and it'll take you to that questionnaire and look at the different status of it. To actually add the assessment, you would click on the Add Assessment button, and then you'd click on one of the published templates available to you. And then you would type in the name, the organization that it would belong to. You can assign it an approver, and then you can also assign it the respondent as well. Once you've done all of that and you press create, all of the assessment that you've created will pop up here. So now what will happen is once you've created it and you assigned it a respondent, that respondent will receive an email saying that you've been assigned this questionnaire to complete. Please click on the link below to log in and access the project. So they'll click on the link and it will take them directly to this setup here. So what they'll do is they'll go in, they'll answer all of these different questions. So you can, once you've answered all of these questions, you can go in. The respondent will go in, step by step, section by section, and complete all of the rest of the remaining questions here. Once they've done all of this, they can go ahead and submit. Once they've submitted that, then it'll send out the second template here. So if you don't have anything assigned to the specific template where you're sending out another one, what will happen is it will take that template and put it under review. So it'll go from in progress when the respondent is filling it out, and then it will be considered under review once they submit it. Once they've submitted this assessment, that's when the approver will go in. They'll receive an email notification saying that as the approver, this assessment has been submitted, so please go in and review. So they'll go in, they'll see all of the different questions that have been answered, and then they can go in and look at these different flags here. So based on the logic that you've designed, you'll be able to see, the flag that has been popped up due to how that person answered. So you can also manually add a risk as well by clicking on the risk button and going through that same process of assigning it a risk level, a risk owner, so somebody who will be in charge of that risk, along with a description and a recommendation. So once you've done all that, you can go ahead and approve it. The other option you have is to also look at our notes. So we have a notes section as well. So if you have multiple approvers who are going in, or if you have an approver that would like to communicate to the respondent, you can add notes here. You can either assign it to yourself for approvers only, so that would be more of an internal prospect, or you can assign it to everyone, and that would make it public to anyone who has access to this questionnaire. The last option we have is the ability to send back the questionnaire. So if this is under review as the approver, if you wanted to gather more information on something, you could click on the send back feature, type in whatever information you need assistance with for the respondent, and then once they press submit, this assessment will go from under review back to in progress. So that way it allows for further communication between the respondent and the approver for more clarity. But once the approver's gone in and they've decided that everything looks good, they can go ahead and approve it. Once they approve this questionnaire, it goes from under review to complete. So you'll be able to see the questionnaires that have been completed. You'll still see the pop-up for the flags that appear, so you'll still see flags here. You can still add risks after it's been completed as well. So once it's been completed, that completes the entire PIA process. So you've gone in, you've customized your questionnaire, you've published it, and then you've sent it out to a respondent or multiple respondents to complete. They'll go in, they'll answer the questions, submit it. It goes from in progress to under review. the approver will get notified about this. They'll go in and they can flag risks, they can add notes, or they can send back to the respondent for further information. But once the approver approves of that PIA process, it automatically becomes completed, and you'll be able to see that questionnaire all in this assessment inventory here. So once that's been completed, you can do a couple of things. You'll be able to use our dashboard. So our dashboard contains all of the assessments in a visual manner, split into the different stages, so you can see which ones have gone out. You can categorize by the different organization groups as well. Next, we have our aging assessment graph. So here is where you'll be able to see a list of all of the different assessments that have gone out. And then if you hover over one, on the right side, you'll be able to see the assessment name, the status, along with the duration and the organization group as well. And if you click on this, it'll take you to that assessment as well. So you'll be able to get a further granular look at what's going on with that assessment. Next, we have our risk details. So this highlights all of the risks that have appeared in the overall, in all of the assessments that have gone out. And again, you can filter by organization group, you can filter by the status of the risk, and it'll also provide a number of the total different risks that have popped up as well. Lastly, we have our assessments count by open risk. So you'll be able to see things like if you filter by like different templates, you'll be able to see which templates have an open risk and which ones don't have any risks assigned to them. And again, you can filter by the organization group as well. Lastly, we have our reports feature. So what you'll be able to do here is you'll be able to create a report based on the PIAs that you've collected and all of the answers that have been submitted and completed. To do that, you would click on Create New, assign it a report name, and a description if necessary. And then you can click on the type. So for this purpose, we'll do assessment automation, and then we can do the one PIA template. And it'll generate a report for all assessments that have been sent out using that template. So you'll see here 3 assessments or projects that have gone out have used this template. And you can see a variety of different information available to you here. You can also customize this report to include or exclude any fields you like. So by clicking on this customization button, you'll be able to do things like if you wanted to add whether, let's say, they included legitimate interest as a possible answer or as an answer that was part of the question. You can add available fields here into the visible fields that will show up in this report, and you can also remove fields that you don't think apply here. You can also order these around as well. So once you've done all of that, you can save this report. You'll see the changes take place here. It's also important that once you save it on that pop-up, you also save it here as well. So that way it takes into account both the form on the tool, and if you decided to export this report, which you'll be able to, it'll show those changes in the report as well. So if I were to go in here, you can see the report's been created. All I have to do is click on that link, open the spreadsheet, and it'll show the exact layout of the report that you customized here in the tool. So you'll see the template name, the legitimate interest column, all of this that appears in the tool will be available at your disposal. So if a regulator came or a compliance officer showed up and wanted to be able to see the different risks available, the different privacy risks that are taking place within your organization, you'll be able to show them a customized report to demonstrate all of that. So I know that was a lot to take in. Just to kind of summarize that process, you can customize your questionnaire that you want sent out. You'll be able to do things like send out that questionnaire in the form of an assessment to the respondents. The respondents will be able to answer those questions. Then once they submit it, the approver will be notified. They'll go in. They can look at the different flagged risks along with adding risks as well. They can add approval notes, and they can add the ability to send back the assessment for further information. Once they've done all of that and they approve of the assessment, they will be able to complete that assessment and be able to show that information in the form of a report that can be customized. And you'll also be able to see a dashboard to get a high-level overview of all of the different assessments that have gone out that are split into the different statuses as well. So that covers pretty much the process of the assessment automation. I did see some questions in the chat, so let me get to that real quickly. So, Kat, you asked if you can set a review flag once it's approved for, say, 12 months. So, are you saying that, let me see. So I believe once you apply the flagged risk, so if we were to go here, let's say we did this one. So you can assign the risk here. You can assign a deadline for that risk. So what that means is you'll be able to assign a deadline to the risk owner to take care of that risk. But there isn't an option currently. It may be on the roadmap, but what this deadline does is it allows you to assign the risk owner a deadline of taking care of that risk and mitigating it. I think that's it from the chat. I'm going to unmute everybody and let me know if there are any other questions you guys might have. Okay, does anyone else have any questions about this PIA process? All right, if no one has any other questions, feel free to reach out to your consultant for the recording of this webinar. And then for any other specific use cases, also speak with your consultant regarding that as well. Thanks everyone for joining this webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.